The evening rush at the Silver Spoon was in full swing. Trays balanced perfectly on fingertips, the clink of fine china against silverware, soft laughter mixing with the gentle piano music playing through hidden speakers. And through it all moved Lily, gliding between tables with practiced ease. At 26, Lily had mastered the art of being both visible and invisible. There when needed, gone when not. Tonight her sensible black shoes were already aching, but her smile never faltered. 6 hours into her double shift, she'd learned long ago that customers tipped better when they couldn't see your exhaustion. "Table 14 needs more water," whispered Tomas, another server, as they passed each other near the kitchen. Lily nodded, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. Table 14, the corner spot with the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. For the past hour, it had been occupied by Richard Blackwood and his entourage of business associates, a reservation that had sent the restaurant manager into a nervous frenzy earlier. Everyone in the upscale Manhattan dining scene knew Richard Blackwood, real estate billionaire, owner of half a dozen skyscrapers downtown, a man who made more money before breakfast than most of the staff would see in a year, the kind of customer who expected perfection and made sure you knew when you fell short. Grabbing a crystal pitcher of ice water, Lily approached table 14 carefully. Richard sat with his back to the room, as if the view of the city he partially owned was more interesting than the people around him. 3 men in expensive suits hung on his every word, laughing too loudly at comments that weren't meant to be funny. "More water, gentlemen?" Lily asked, her voice pleasant but not overly familiar. One of the men nodded absently. Another didn't even look up. Richard Blackwood continued his story about some business deal gone his way, gesturing with manicured hands that had likely never washed a dish or served a meal. Lily leaned forward slightly to refill the first glass. The conversation shifted to someone named Thompson, who apparently hadn't invited Richard to some yacht party. "Can you believe the nerve?" Richard's voice carried the special outrage of the very wealthy when denied something insignificant. "After I practically handed him that contract last year." As Lily moved to the second glass, one of the men suddenly pushed his chair back to emphasize a point, bumping Lily's elbow just as she was pouring. Water sloshed over the rim, splashing onto the pristine white tablecloth and, worse, onto the sleeve of Richard Blackwood's suit. The table fell silent. "I'm so sorry." "Sir?" Lily said immediately, pulling a cloth from her apron pocket. "Let me—" "Don't touch it," Richard said, his voice cutting through her apology like a knife. He dabbed at his sleeve with his napkin, looking at the water as if it were something far more offensive. "This suit costs more than you make in a month." The 3 other men at the table shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. "I'm very sorry about the accident," Lily tried again. "I can bring you another napkin or—" "An accident?" Richard looked up at her now, his eyes cold. "Is that what we're calling incompetence these days?" Interesting, heat crept up Lily's neck. 6 years of serving entitled customers had given her thick skin, but something about the way he was looking at her, like she was something stuck to the bottom of his Italian leather shoe, made her stomach tighten. "Some people clearly aren't cut out for jobs requiring basic coordination," he continued, looking around the table as if inviting his companions to join in. 2 of them offered weak smiles. The third suddenly became very interested in the menu. "Tell me," Richard said, turning his attention back to Lily, "is this what you plan to do with your life? Spill water on people who actually contribute to society?" The question hung in the air. Several nearby diners had gone quiet, pretending not to listen. Lily thought about the piano book stashed in her tiny apartment, the scholarship to the prestigious Westridge Conservatory that she'd had to abandon 3 years ago when her mother got sick, the online classes she still took when she could afford them, the practice room she rented by the hour when tips were good. She thought about explaining that this job, the one he was mocking, was what kept a roof over her head and helped pay for her younger brother's college textbooks, that she worked doubles most days of the week and still barely made rent in a city where even a closet-sized apartment cost a fortune. But she said none of this. "I apologize for the spill, sir. I'll have someone bring fresh napkins right away," she said instead, her voice steady despite the burning in her throat. Richard looked almost disappointed that she hadn't taken the bait. With a dismissive wave, he turned back to his companions. As I was saying about Thompson, Lily retreated to the kitchen, her chest tight. She grabbed fresh napkins and took a moment to collect herself by the service station. "Don't let Blackwood get to you," said Thomas, squeezing her shoulder as he passed with a tray of desserts. "Guy's notorious for being the worst tipper and biggest headache." "I'm fine," Lily assured him, though the words felt hollow. "Just another night, right?" By the time she returned to the table with fresh napkins, Richard had moved on to loudly critiquing the wine list. He didn't acknowledge her presence as she quickly replaced the damp napkins and wiped up the spilled water. The rest of their meal continued without incident. Though Lily noticed Richard would purposely stop speaking whenever she approached the table, as if she might steal his precious business ideas along with the empty bread basket. When they finally paid, with a tip exactly calculated to the minimum acceptable percentage, Lily felt the tension in her shoulders release slightly. Just 3 more hours until her shift ended. "Miss." Richard's voice stopped her as she turned to leave. "One moment." Lily turned back, bracing herself. "Yes, sir?" He held out a business card between 2 fingers. "I'm hosting a charity gala at my home this Saturday evening. We need extra servers." Lily stared at the card, confused by this unexpected turn. "Sir?" "Double the usual rate," he added, as if that explained everything. "Tell Eduardo I specifically asked for you." The request was so unexpected that for a moment Lily wondered if she'd misheard him. After the water incident and his obvious disdain, why would he want her working at his private event? "Thank you for the opportunity," she said carefully, taking the card. The thick paper stock felt expensive between her fingers, the embossed letters catching the light. "I'll speak with management about it." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Excellent. We do love supporting those in challenging circumstances." The words were polite enough, but something in his tone made Lily's skin crawl. Still, double pay was double pay. The rent was due next week, and her brother had just texted about another expensive textbook he needed. "Thank you again," she said, tucking the card into her apron pocket. As she walked away, she heard one of the men at the table ask Richard something in a low voice, followed by Richard's response, just loud enough for her to catch. "Trust me, it'll be the highlight of the evening." Laughter followed her back to the kitchen. Later that night, as Lily finally clocked out just past midnight, Eduardo, the restaurant manager, caught her by the coat rack. "Richard Blackwood's office called," he said, looking both impressed and slightly worried. "They specifically requested you for Saturday's event. Apparently he's hosting some big charity thing for the children's hospital. Half the city's elite will be there." "He mentioned it," Lily said, wrapping her scarf around her neck. The early October chill would make the walk to the subway station uncomfortable. Eduardo hesitated. "Look, I know Blackwood can be difficult. If you don't want to do it, I can find someone else." For a brief moment, Lily considered declining. The memory of Richard's condescending smile made her stomach turn. But then she thought about the approaching bills, her brother's texts, and the piano practice room she hadn't been able to afford in weeks. "No, it's fine," she said. "I could use the extra money." "If you're sure," Eduardo said, still looking concerned. "Just be careful around him. Blackwood has a reputation for these elaborate parties where he likes to be the center of attention, sometimes at other people's expense." "I can handle difficult customers," Lily assured him, though uneasiness prickled at the back of her neck. "I've been doing this long enough." Outside in the cool night air, Lily pulled out her phone and opened the banking app. The balance glared back at her, $247.38. Not nearly enough for everything that needed paying. With a sigh, she tucked the phone away and quickened her pace toward the subway. As she walked, she hummed softly to herself, a habit from childhood that had never faded. Tonight, it was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the piece she'd been working on before finances forced her to cancel her practice room sessions. Her fingers moved subtly at her sides, playing invisible keys in perfect time with the melody in her head. What Richard Blackwood and his wealthy friends would never understand was that music wasn't just something she did, it was part of who she was, flowing through her even when no piano was in sight. One day, she promised herself, she would find her way back to it for real. For now, though, she had bills to pay and a brother to support. The thought of working at Blackwood's mansion made her uneasy, but she pushed the feeling aside. Whatever game he was playing, she would handle it with the same quiet dignity she brought to everything else. After all, it was just one night. How bad Saturday evening arrived too quickly. Lily stood at the bus stop, checking the address on the business card for the third time. Richard Blackwood's home wasn't just in the wealthy part of town. It was in a neighborhood where even the sidewalks seemed polished. A place where people like her only appeared to serve, clean, or deliver. The October wind whipped around her, finding every gap in her thin coat. She'd spent her last bit of free time sewing a loose button back on the coat, rather than taking a much-needed nap between shifts. 6 hours of sleep in 2 days was catching up with her, but the promise of double pay kept her moving forward. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her brother Anthony. "How's it going? Did you get the extra shift?" Lily typed back quickly. "On my way there now. Don't worry about the textbook. I'll have the money by Monday." Anthony's response was immediate. "You're the best. But please get some rest too, okay?" She smiled, tucking the phone away as the bus approached. Her brother was the only person who worried about her the way she worried about him. Their mother had raised them to look out for each other, and they'd needed that lesson more than ever since she'd passed away last year. The bus ride took nearly an hour, traveling from her neighborhood of crowded apartment buildings to the tree-lined streets where houses sat back from the road, hidden behind security gates and manicured hedges. When she finally stepped off at her stop, Lily felt like she'd traveled to another country rather than just across the city. Here the air seemed different, cleaner somehow, as if even pollution knew better than to trespass. Blackwood's mansion was impossible to miss. It rose at the end of a curved driveway like something from a movie, all gleaming windows and stone, with lights illuminating its features against the darkening sky. Cars that cost more than her entire life savings lined the circular drive, sleek foreign models with drivers waiting patiently beside them. Approaching the service entrance as instructed, Lily felt strangely small, not because of the mansion's grandeur, but because of the sudden unwelcome feeling that she didn't belong here, not even as staff. "Get it together," she whispered to herself. "It's just a house, just a job." A harried-looking woman with a clipboard met her at the door. Name? Lily Chen, from the Silver Spoon. The woman checked her list. "Right, you're the last one to arrive. Everyone else has been here for an hour already. I'm sorry, the instruction said just get changed quickly. We're already behind schedule." She thrust a garment bag into Lily's arms. "Bathrooms down the hall to the left. 5 minutes." The service area bustled with activity. Caterers arranged tiny, perfect appetizers on silver trays. Bartenders stocked portable bars with bottles that probably cost more than Lily's monthly rent. Everyone moved with the efficient precision of people who had done this many times before. Lily changed quickly in the small bathroom. The uniform was simple but elegant, a black dress that mercifully fit well enough with a white half-apron. Looking in the mirror, she smoothed her hair back into a neat bun and pinched her cheeks for some color. The face that looked back at her seemed both familiar and strange, a person playing dress-up in someone else's world. When she emerged, the clipboard woman, who introduced herself as Mrs. Winters, the household manager, began a rapid-fire list of instructions. "You'll be serving champagne and appetizers during the cocktail hour. Stay to the left side of the ballroom near the windows. Don't engage guests in conversation unless they speak to you first. If Mr. Blackwood signals you, attend to him immediately." Lily nodded, taking a tray of champagne flutes filled with golden, bubbling liquid. Each glass probably cost more than what she made in an hour. "And for heaven's sake," Mrs. Winters added, giving Lily a critical once-over, "try not to spill anything." The comment stung. Had Richard told his staff about the water incident? Or worse, was this why he'd specifically requested her to mock her in front of his wealthy friends if she made another mistake? There was no time to dwell on it. Mrs. Winters was already ushering her through a door that led from the service area into the main house. The ballroom took Lily's breath away. Soaring ceilings with intricate moldings, crystal chandeliers that sent light dancing across the marble floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a garden lit with thousands of tiny lights, making it look like a scene from a fairy tale. And the people, women in designer gowns that probably cost more than a year of Lily's salary, dripping with jewels that caught the light with every movement. Men in perfectly tailored tuxedos, many with the easy confidence that came from never having to worry about money. Lily took a deep breath and stepped into the room, tray balanced carefully. She'd done this hundreds of times before, she reminded herself. Different setting, same job. For the first hour, she moved through the growing crowd without incident. Take empty glasses. Offer full ones. Smile politely. Move on. Repeat. A few guests thanked her, most didn't acknowledge her at all. And one older gentleman with kind eyes tipped her $20 just for bringing him a glass of water. For college, he'd said with a wink, as if they shared a secret. She tucked the bill into her apron pocket, wondering how he'd guessed she was a student. Maybe it was written on her face somehow, the weariness of someone working and studying and barely managing either. As the ballroom filled, Lily caught glimpses of Richard Blackwood moving through the crowd. Unlike at the restaurant, here he was animated, laughing loudly, touching shoulders, playing the gracious host. A different person entirely, or perhaps just a different mask. Several times she felt his eyes on her from across the room. Each time she looked up, he would quickly turn away, as if he hadn't been watching her at all. The uneasiness she'd felt earlier returned, settling in her stomach like a stone. Champagne, miss? Lily turned to offer a fresh glass to a woman in a stunning red gown, only to find herself face to face with a familiar face. Professor Wilson, her former music theory professor, looked equally surprised. Lily? I hardly recognized you. Her eyes took in the uniform, the tray. You're working here. Just for the evening, Lily explained, suddenly self-conscious. Professor Wilson had been one of her biggest champions at the conservatory, the one who'd fought hardest to keep her scholarship when Lily's grades had slipped during her mother's illness. I didn't realize you knew Richard, Professor Wilson said, accepting a glass of champagne. I don't, not really. I serve at a restaurant he frequents. Something in Professor Wilson's expression shifted. Concern, perhaps. I see, and how are your studies going? Have you been able to return to the program? The question was kind but painful. Not yet, but I'm taking online classes when I can, keeping up with my practice too. The last part wasn't entirely true. Her keyboard had been pawned months ago to cover Anthony's first tuition payment. Professor Wilson nodded, but before she could respond, a small commotion near the center of the room drew their attention. Richard Blackwood was climbing the few steps to a small platform where a string quartet had been playing soft background music. The musicians paused, and the room gradually fell silent. Friends, colleagues, valued supporters, Richard began, his voice carrying easily through the large space. Thank you for joining me tonight in support of the Children's Medical Research Foundation. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Your generosity never fails to humble me, Richard continued. Though nothing about his posture suggested humility, tonight we've already raised over $2 million, and the evening is still young. More enthusiastic applause this time. Now, I've promised you some entertainment, and I believe in delivering on promises. His smile widened, and his eyes scanned the room until they found Lily, standing near the windows with her tray. The stone in her stomach grew heavier. Many of you know I appreciate talent in all its forms, Richard said. Sometimes it hides in the most unexpected places. For instance, he gestured toward Lily with a sweeping hand. That young lady there. She works at the Silver Spoon where she serves me regularly. What you wouldn't know is that she claims to have once studied at the prestigious Westridge Conservatory. All heads turned toward Lily. The tray in her hands suddenly felt impossibly heavy. How did he know? She'd never mentioned the conservatory to him or anyone else at the restaurant. Had he looked into her background? The thought was both confusing and unsettling. As you can see, Richard continued, life has taken her in a different direction. But tonight I thought it might be entertaining to give her a chance to show us what might have been. He gestured to a grand piano that Lily hadn't noticed before, sitting on the far side of the room near the garden doors. A beautiful instrument, its polished surface gleaming under the chandelier light. Would you join me up here, miss? Richard asked, his tone making it clear this wasn't really a request. Professor Wilson touched Lily's arm gently. You don't have to do this, she whispered. This is inappropriate. But Lily could see in the older woman's eyes that they both knew refusing wasn't really an option. Not when she needed this job, needed the money. Not when Richard Blackwood could easily ensure she never worked at another high-end restaurant in the city again. A server appeared at her side, taking the champagne tray from her hands. The room had gone silent, all eyes watching as Lily made her way toward the platform, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. Lily met his gaze steadily. The fear she'd felt earlier had evaporated, replaced by a quiet confidence she hadn't experienced in years. "What exactly did you have in mind, Mr. Blackwood?" "Not this," he admitted, gesturing to the guest still buzzing about her playing. "I suppose I misjudged you." "You judged me exactly as you meant to," Lily replied. "You just didn't have all the information." Richard studied her for a moment, seeming to really see her for the first time. "No," he finally said. "It appears I didn't." He hesitated, then added, "For what it's worth, you play beautifully." The compliment, unexpected and seemingly genuine, caught Lily off guard. "Thank you," she said simply, unsure what else to add. As she turned to leave, Richard spoke again. "Miss Chen?" Lily paused, glancing back at him. "Sometimes life gives us second chances," he said. "I suggest you take the one you've been offered tonight." Whether his words were meant as genuine advice or simply a way to ease his own conscience, Lily couldn't tell. But as she walked away, Eleanor Harper's business card tucked safely in her pocket, she realized that for the first time in years, a second chance felt like more than just a distant dream. The subway car rocked gently as Lily sat with her eyes closed, Eleanor Harper's business card clutched in her hand. 3 hours had passed since her performance at Richard Blackwood's mansion, but her fingers still tingled as if they'd just left the piano keys. The memory of playing on that magnificent grand piano after so long without a proper instrument felt almost dreamlike. A young man sitting across from her was watching a video on his phone, the tinny sound leaking through his headphones. Lily opened her eyes when she recognized what she was hearing. A choppy, distant recording of Chopin's Ballade No. 1. Her heart skipped a beat when she realized it was her playing. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely audible over the rumble of the subway. The young man looked up, startled. Is that from tonight? At the Blackwood mansion?" He nodded, pulling off his headphones. "Yeah, it's blowing up online. Someone posted it about an hour ago." He tilted his screen toward her. "This you?" Lily leaned forward, shocked to see herself seated at the piano, completely lost in the music. The video quality wasn't great, clearly taken from someone's phone in the crowd, but there was no mistaking her in the waitress uniform, playing with a passion that seemed to radiate from the small screen. "That's me," she admitted, unsure whether to be flattered or mortified. The young man's eyes widened. "For real? That's amazing. The video's got like 50,000 views already. People are going crazy for it in the comments." 50,000? Lily repeated, her voice faint. The idea that 50,000 strangers had watched her play made her dizzy. "Yeah, it's everywhere. The whole waitress shows up rich guy angle is really hitting." He handed her his phone. "See for yourself." Lily scrolled through the comments with trembling fingers. "Who is she? Someone sign this girl now." Rich people be like, play something simple, then get destroyed by Chopin Ilmau. That Blackwood dude's face when she started playing. This is why you don't judge people by their job. Talent is everywhere. Anyone know her name? Conservatory grad here, and that technique is world-class. Her eyes blurred with tears. After years of feeling invisible, of putting her dreams on a shelf while she worked double shifts and worried about rent. Suddenly, people were seeing her, really seeing her for what she'd always known she could be. "You okay?" the young man asked, concerned. Lily nodded, handing back the phone. "Yeah, just been a long night." When she finally reached her stop, Lily stepped off the subway in a daze. The late October night had turned cold, but she barely felt it as she walked the 3 blocks to her apartment building. Her mind was too full, of music, of possibilities, of Eleanor Harper's words. Talent like yours shouldn't be serving champagne. The stairwell to her 5th-floor walk-up had never seemed so long. By the time she reached her door, exhaustion had settled deep in her bones. 20 hours awake, an emotional roller coaster, and the physical demands of playing after so long had left her completely drained. She fumbled with her keys, dropping them twice before managing to unlock the door. The apartment was dark except for the blue glow of a laptop screen. Anthony sat hunched over the kitchen table, textbooks spread around him, fast asleep on his arms. Lily smiled, closing the door softly behind her. Her brother had always been able to fall asleep anywhere, even as a kid. She draped her coat over a chair and gently touched his shoulder. "Hey, Studyman, time for a real bed." Anthony jolted awake, blinking owlishly. "Lily, what time is it?" "Almost 2 in the morning. Come on, you can't sleep like that." He rubbed his face, fully waking up now. How was the fancy party? Did you make good tips? Lily hesitated, unsure how to even begin explaining the night's events. It was different than I expected. Something in her tone made Anthony study her more carefully. Different how? Did something happen? Rather than answering, Lily pulled out her phone and found the video the young man on the subway had shown her. She handed it to Anthony without a word. He watched in silence, his expression shifting from confusion to surprise to something like awe. When the video ended, he looked up at her, eyes wide. Holy crap, Lily, holy crap, she laughed, the tension of the evening finally breaking. Yeah, that about sums it up. This is insane. You're trending and playing like you never stopped. He stood up, suddenly full of energy despite the late hour. This could change everything. Have you seen the comments? People are looking for you. I know. It's overwhelming. Anthony grabbed her hands, his face serious. You have to follow up on this. This is the break you've been waiting for. Lily's smile faded slightly as reality reasserted itself. It's not that simple, Aunt. One viral video doesn't pay the bills or get me back into school. But it could be a start, right? A foot in the door? He gestured around their tiny apartment with its second-hand furniture and water-stained ceiling. We've been treading water for so long. Maybe this is your chance to swim. Lily pulled Eleanor Harper's card from her pocket, turning it over in her fingers. I did get this. She wants me to call her tomorrow about possibly returning to Westridge. Anthony's eyes grew even wider. Eleanor Harper? The Eleanor Harper? The one Mom used to read articles about? Lily nodded. Their mother had followed Eleanor's career religiously, collecting magazine profiles and concert reviews like precious artifacts. The very same. Then what are you worried about? This is huge. Lily sank into a chair, the reality of their situation dampening her excitement. Even if she helps me get back into the conservatory, how would we afford it? I barely make enough for rent and your books as it is. We'd figure it out, Anthony insisted. Maybe there's a scholarship or... I can't ask you to put your education on hold while I chase my dream, Lily interrupted. We agreed your degree comes first. It's what Mom wanted. Mom wanted us both to follow our dreams, Anthony countered. She wouldn't want you serving rich jerks for the rest of your life when you can play like that. Before Lily could respond, her phone buzzed with a text. Then another. And another. The first was from Thomas at the Silver Spoon. You're famous. Everyone at work is freaking out. The second from Eduardo, the manager. Just saw a video of you playing piano at Blackwood's. Call me when you can. We should talk. The third was from a number she didn't recognize. This is Professor Wilson. Phenomenal performance tonight. Eleanor Harper is serious about helping you. Take her up on her offer. You belong at a piano, not a dinner table. Lily stared at the messages, a strange mixture of hope and fear rising in her chest. It's happening so fast, she whispered. Good things sometimes do, Anthony said, squeezing her shoulder. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. But sleep proved elusive. Lily lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with possibilities and practicalities. By the time dawn broke, she'd made up her mind. She would call Eleanor Harper. She would see what doors might open. But she wouldn't abandon her responsibilities or make promises she couldn't keep. When morning arrived, she made coffee and dialed the number on Eleanor's card with trembling fingers. To her surprise, Eleanor herself answered. Ms. Harper speaking. Hello, Ms. Harper, this is Lily Chen from last night. Lily! Eleanor's voice warmed immediately. I was hoping you'd call. Have you seen what's happening online? I have. It's a bit overwhelming. Well, brace yourself for more. Several major music blogs have picked up the story, and my phone has been ringing all morning with people asking about the Waitress pianist. Lily sank into a chair, her legs suddenly weak. I don't know what to say. Say you'll meet me for lunch today, Eleanor replied. We have much to discuss about your future. I have a shift at the Silver Spoon at noon. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Lily, with all due respect, I think you may need to reconsider your priorities. This moment won't last forever. The spotlight can move on as quickly as it arrived. Lily took a deep breath. I understand that. But I have responsibilities. Bills to pay. My brother's education. All of which we can discuss, Eleanor interrupted gently. I'm not suggesting you abandon your obligations. I'm suggesting you allow yourself to consider that there might be another path forward. After arranging to meet Eleanor at 1 o'clock, Lily called the silver spoon. Eduardo answered immediately. Lily, I was hoping you'd call. Have you seen the video? Yes, it's incredible. I had no idea you played like that. Listen, I wanted to tell you not to worry about your shift today. Take the day off, paid. Lily blinked in surprise. Really? Really? And Richard Blackwood called this morning. Her stomach tightened. What did he want? To speak with you, actually. He left his private number. Lily's first instinct was to refuse, but curiosity won out. What did he say exactly? Just that he wanted to apologize properly and discuss something important. He seemed different, not his usual self. After hanging up, Lily sat at the kitchen table staring at the paper where she'd written down Richard's number. The man had tried to humiliate her in front of hundreds of people. Yet something in their final exchange at the gala suggested he might be capable of growth. Before she could overthink it, she dialed. He answered on the second ring. Mr. Blackwood, it's Lily Chen. There was a moment of silence. Then, Ms. Chen, thank you for calling back. His voice sounded different, less confident, more genuine. Eduardo said you wanted to speak with me. Yes, first I want to apologize. What I did last night was cruel and completely unacceptable. I used my position to try to embarrass you for my own amusement. And in doing so, I behaved in a way that shames me deeply. The apology was unexpected, and Lily found herself momentarily speechless. You don't have to forgive me, Richard continued, but I hope you'll allow me to make amends. I've established a scholarship fund at Westridge in your name. It will cover full tuition for a student in financial need each year, with priority given to those working while studying, and the first recipient, should you accept, would be you. Lily's breath caught in her throat. I don't understand. Why would you do this? Because talent deserves nurturing regardless of circumstance, and because sometimes people like me need a reminder of what truly matters. He paused. Your playing last night didn't just impress my guests, Ms. Chen. It changed something in me. As Lily hung up the phone, Anthony emerged from his bedroom, yawning. Everything okay? He asked, noticing her expression. Lily looked up, a strange calm settling over her. I'm meeting Eleanor Harper for lunch to discuss returning to Westridge. Richard Blackwood just created a scholarship that would cover my tuition. And apparently I'm trending online as the Waitress pianist. Anthony stared at her for a long moment before a slow smile spread across his face. So what you're saying is, today might be a good day to quit your job? For the first time in years, Lily laughed without reservation, the sound filling their small apartment with something that felt remarkably like hope. 1 year later, Lily stood backstage at Westridge Conservatory's Brennan Hall, taking deep breaths to steady her nerves. Through the heavy curtain, she could hear the murmur of the audience filling the auditorium for the spring showcase, her first major public performance since returning to school. 5 minutes. Ms. Chen, the stage manager said quietly, clipboard in hand. Lily nodded, smoothing down the simple black dress she'd chosen for tonight. Not a waitress uniform, not borrowed clothes, but her own dress, purchased specifically for this occasion. A small thing perhaps, but it represented so much. The past year had unfolded like a dream, sometimes wonderful, sometimes challenging, but always moving forward. After her viral moment at Richard Blackwood's mansion, opportunities had appeared almost overnight. The scholarship he'd established had covered her tuition and basic expenses, allowing her to return to Westridge for the spring semester. Eleanor Harper had become not just a benefactor, but a mentor, connecting Lily with private students to teach on weekends, which provided enough income that she only needed one part-time job at a cafe near campus, instead of the 3 jobs she'd juggled before. The video of her playing had continued to circulate, eventually reaching over 2 million views. People recognized her occasionally, on the subway, at the grocery store, in the hallways of Westridge. You're the waitress pianist, they'd say, and Lily would smile politely, still uncomfortable with the attention but grateful for the doors it had opened. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from Anthony. Front row, center, as promised. Mom would be so proud tonight. Tears pricked at her eyes. Anthony had transferred to a university in the city to be closer to her, and they'd found a small apartment halfway between their schools. Their life wasn't easy. Both still worked while studying, and money remained tight, but they were moving forward together, supporting each other's dreams just as their mother had taught them. Another text arrived. This one from Professor Wilson. Your mother's favorite flowers are waiting in your dressing room for after. Play from your heart tonight. The flowers had been Professor Wilson's tradition since Lily's return. Always her mother's favorites. Always with the same message. She's listening. The stage manager reappeared. We're ready for you, Ms. Chen. Lily took one final deep breath and walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding at first, the audience a dark mass beyond them. As her eyes adjusted, she could make out familiar faces in the front rows. Anthony, beaming with pride. Professor Wilson, nodding encouragement. Eleanor Harper, elegant and poised as always. And there, a few seats down, sat Richard Blackwood. Their paths had crossed several times over the past year. After his initial apology and the scholarship announcement, Richard had kept his distance, seeming to understand that his presence might be unwelcome. But gradually, as Lily established herself at Westridge, she'd seen him at various school functions and charity events. Their interactions had been brief but cordial, each encounter less awkward than the last. 2 months ago, he'd approached her after a small recital. You've come a long way from the Silver Spoon, he'd said, not unkindly. We both have, she'd replied, and meant it. The man who had tried to humiliate her had visibly changed, humbler, more thoughtful in his interactions with everyone, not just her. Now he sat in the audience, not as an adversary, but as another supporter. Life took strange turns sometimes. Lily settled at the piano, adjusting the bench slightly. Tonight she would perform Chopin's Nocturne in B-flat minor, followed by an original composition, her first written over the past 6 months as part of her advanced studies. The hall fell silent as she placed her hands on the keys. Unlike that night at Richard's mansion, there was no fear now, no uncertainty. Just the familiar excitement that came before sharing music with others. She began to play, the haunting opening notes of the nocturne filling the space. The piece was melancholy yet beautiful, perfect for honoring where she'd been and acknowledging the difficult journey that had brought her here. As she played, memories surfaced like photographs, her mother sitting beside her at their old upright piano, guiding her small hands over the keys. The crushing disappointment of leaving Westridge the first time, long nights serving tables, feet aching, dreams fading. The humiliation at Richard's gala transformed into triumph. Eleanor's steady guidance over the past year, Anthony's unwavering support. The nocturne ended, and brief applause rippled through the hall before Lily began her original piece, titled simply Return. This was the true test, not just playing another composer's work, but sharing her own musical voice with the world. The composition began quietly, hesitantly, echoing the uncertainty of her journey. Gradually it built, incorporating elements of classical structure but with modern harmonies that reflected her unique perspective. The middle section grew bolder, more confident, before resolving into a final movement that spoke of hope and possibility without denying the challenges that remained. As the last notes faded, there was a moment of complete silence. Then the audience rose to their feet, applause thundering through the hall. Lily stood, bowing deeply, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. Backstage after the performance, her small dressing room overflowed with well-wishers. Anthony hugged her so tightly she could barely breathe. Professor Wilson beamed with teacher's pride. Fellow students and faculty offered congratulations. That original piece was extraordinary, Eleanor said, embracing Lily warmly. I've already had 3 people ask me if it's been recorded yet. Recorded? Lily repeated, surprised. Of course. People will want to hear it again. Eleanor's eyes twinkled. In fact, I've spoken with some colleagues at Meridian Records. They're interested in discussing your first album. Anthony whooped loudly, making everyone laugh. See, I told you. Next stop, Carnegie Hall. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Lily said, though she couldn't help smiling at her brother's enthusiasm. As the crowd thinned, Richard Blackwood appeared in the doorway, holding a small package. May I come in? He asked, hesitating at the threshold. Lily nodded, and the few remaining well-wishers discreetly slipped out, leaving them alone. Your performance was magnificent, Richard said, genuine admiration in his voice, especially your original composition. You have a distinctive voice as a composer. Thank you, Lily replied. I'm still learning, aren't we all? He handed her the package. This is for you. A small graduation gift, though I know you have another year to go. Lily unwrapped it carefully. Inside was an antique metronome, beautifully crafted in polished wood with brass fittings. It belonged to my grandmother, Richard explained. She was a pianist too, though not nearly as talented as you. She always said it kept her honest in her practice. Lily ran her fingers over the smooth wood, touched by the personal nature of the gift. Why are you giving me this? Richard considered his answer carefully. Because you changed something in me that night at the gala. You reminded me that people are more than what we see on the surface, that humility and respect cost nothing but mean everything. He smiled ruefully. I was raised to believe that wealth and power were the measures of a person's worth. You showed me how empty that belief really is. I was just playing piano, Lily said softly. You were being authentically yourself in a moment designed to shame you. There's a courage in that I'm still learning. He moved toward the door, then paused. The scholarship fund, by the way. We've selected next year's recipient. A young violinist working nights at a grocery store to support his family. Remarkable talent. After Richard left, Lily sat quietly, turning the metronome over in her hands. Life rarely moved in a straight line. Sometimes it took unexpected detours, painful setbacks, and chance encounters to find the right path. Her phone buzzed with a new text message. The cafe where she worked part-time was asking if she could cover a shift tomorrow morning. For a moment, she considered declining. She was tired, and tomorrow was supposed to be a day off. But she typed yes and sent the reply. The money would help with next month's rent, and besides, there was a certain symmetry in it. The waitress pianist. Still a waitress sometimes, still a pianist always. Later that evening, as Lily and Anthony walked home through the city streets, her brother asked, Do you ever regret it? All those years away from music? Lily considered the question, watching their shadows stretch long under the streetlights. No, she finally said. They're part of my story now. Part of my music. Mom would be so proud, Anthony said. Not for the first time. Of both of us, Lily corrected him. Above them, the spring sky was clear enough that a few stars were visible despite the city lights. Lily thought about all the paths that had led to this moment. The struggles and setbacks, the unexpected opportunity born from an attempt at humiliation, the hard work of the past year. There were still challenges ahead, still bills to pay and obstacles to overcome. But tonight, walking beside her brother with the echo of applause still ringing in her ears and the weight of the antique metronome in her bag, Lily felt a deep contentment that had nothing to do with fame or viral videos. She had found her way back to music, and music had found its way back to her. Sometimes life offered second chances. The trick was being brave enough to take them when they appeared. Tomorrow she would serve coffee in the morning and practice piano in the afternoon. Both were part of her journey, neither defining her completely. The waitress pianist finding her own rhythm one step at a time.